Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and tonight we are talking about human trafficking. And live via remote, we have Sariah Lanae Hastings, who is the author of No More Games, and she's going to tell us how she survived human trafficking for over 20 years. Good evening, Sariah. How are you? Thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you. I am doing well. I'm very honored and privileged to be on your show.
Thank you so much. So let's get right to it. Tell us your story.
Um, my story is different from many women. I was raised in what you would consider a normal family. I have a mother and a father. They were middle class citizens, worked. However, they worked a lot. I saw less of them and more of the streets in my childhood than the opposite. I am an only child, so when they were gone for 12, 14 hours a day, I got myself involved in sex and drugs and dabbled in different things because I was just lonely and I just was done with being by myself. I used to have sex parties in my house when I was a teenager, to the point where I would have people. If a boy liked a girl, I would invite the girls over, and I would tell them, okay, this is how much you would have to pay me, and you could choose any room in my parents' house. And that's basically um, how I how I did that for about maybe 3-4 years. I was molested from the age of 2 to the age of 16 by family members and babysitters, women and men. I was um, I had different situations where I was put to where I had to sit on people's laps. I had to do certain things, and I had to turn my head when my father would get money from other women. And I remember my dad used to, I was always a heavy person and child, and my dad used to always call me fat and heavy and all kinds of names, cow, heifer, whatever you want to, whatever name you could think of. And I remember he telling me, the reason why I'm telling you this is so that whenever a kid tells you this, you won't be offended. You won't hurt. You won't cry. And I just had another meeting the other day, and I said to that person, I said, the worst thing to do is tell your child those things. You know, it's one thing for a child to tell to pick on another child. It's different when it's your family members and your parents who are telling you this. And it was a constant growing up. And so between that and my father telling me that the only way that I would ever be married is if I was in a pimp and hoe relationship. My mother, at the age of 16, I told my mom that I had a boyfriend, and she said, "Is that your imagination? Do you really think that a man would want to be with you?" And my dad telling me that I would only be good on my back. That's only what I'm good for. And so through all that, that was my childhood. Um, there's always bits and pieces that are good, but mainly that's how my childhood was. And then at the age of 18, I officially, and the reason why I say officially is because from the age of 11 to the age of 18, I was having sex with men, teenage boys, young men, and I was watching them pass money back and forth between each other, and I was never receiving it, but I realized that that was part of being human trafficked, that they would just have, but I was basically being gang raped because it was multiple men that I would have sex with at periods of time. And so at the age of 18, I officially realized it because when I went to this party, the men said to me, "Do you want to make money?" And I was homeless at the time, and I said, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "What do I have to do?" And they, said, "Well, take this drug, drink this alcohol, and go into this back room." And I went into the back room, and basically I got raped by 3 men. And when I came to it, that's when they said, okay, I'm your pimp. This man told me he was my pimp. And that's when my life really started spiraling down. Um, Most women, and that's why I say my story is different, because most women maybe have one or two traffickers. Some women may be in the being trafficked maybe 3 years or a couple years. This was going on for so long. I had multiple traffickers. My first trafficker I was with for a couple of weeks, and then I left him because another guy said, oh, this is fine and you're good looking and I could do better with you, you could do better with me. And I said, okay. And so I would go with him. And then when I went with him, it was worse. I couldn't eat for, I went 2 weeks without eating. And then I lived in a hotel room. They would pick up the money. I would go to the gas station, the convenience store across the street, and I would get like chips and things. And that was what I ate. So to actually have an actual meal, I didn't have one for like 2.5 weeks. And so I would ask them, can you give me some food? And I would give them the money. They'd be like, yeah. And I would not see them for like 2-3 days and stuff. And then, then I left them. And then I got involved with another, trafficker. And when I was 20, I had a child by my trafficker. And when I had my child, because of my insecurities, and when your child has insecurities, it doesn't just go away overnight. It keeps going, and they hold on to those things, and they play them in their mind. And so at the age of 20, when a man is telling me that I look pretty and I want to have your baby and stuff, and I have his child, and then he says to me, I can help you lose your weight. You can, and he hands me drugs. I did coke, crack, and crystal. And I did all those, is what the three that he introduced me with. And I did it to the point where I did so much that I had a heart attack, because I lost over 100 pounds in a month and a half. And so I chose, and being the young, insecure, lost child, I really, even though I was a young woman, child, because I had a child's mind, I chose the trafficker over my son. I might cry, so please forgive me.
It's okay. Take your time.
So um, I I allowed my wanting love from a man to supersede me having my child. And so I walked out of my son's life at the age of 2.
Mm.
And I'll never forget the night that I did. And I explained that in my book. But I came home to my parents' house, and my father told me that I needed to leave, and I told him that I was going to take my son. And he said, no, if you do, we're going to call the police. And so at the time, I didn't realize what was going on. 22, high off of drugs, I was very angry. And so I cried and I held my son. I was sitting on the bathroom toilet, and I grabbed my son and I held him. I said, I love you. I said, and I'll be back for you. One day I'll be back for you. And I walked out of my son's life. And when I did that, that's when I got deeper into crystal meth and into cocaine. And so I was dealing with my son's father. And after him, I tried to get my life back together. So I started moving around, and I've lived in 33 different states, and in those 33 different states, I've prostituted in each one of them. And I used to tell people that I was the most richest homeless person you ever met, because I lived in a hotel room. That was the only difference between me and a homeless person. The only difference is I stayed in a hotel room. there's times where my traffickers, and I had, like I said, many, sometimes I had multiple traffickers at the same time. I had one in one state, and I would leave that state and they would still want me and I would still send them money, but I had another trafficker for where the state I was at. Or I've been sold. I've literally been sold. That's why it's actually slavery. It's a modern day slavery because I have actually been sold, been bought. I went to a trafficker. He bought a plane ticket for me. I went to him and I got in the car and um, I got smacked and he says you need to be quiet and look down at the ground, and if any man walks by you or if you give any eye contact to a man, I'm going to beat you. And I remember that night that I think I made about $2,500 the first 4 hours. And he said, oh, you're some good goods, was what he told me. He said, I'm going to have to keep you around. And I got fed up because I had to go constantly. I walked the streets in 10-inch stiletto heels, and I didn't walk just like 1-2 blocks. I remember one night I walked almost 100 blocks, kid you not, just in the whole city. I basically walked the whole city. And I remember I had stuffed some money in my bra and I gave him some money, and the next I found out when the Greyhound was leaving, and so I paid a Greyhound ticket, got on the Greyhound, and left. And then I left for a couple of weeks, and then I went back to the same city, but then I found another pimp. And when I found another pimp, and forgive me, I don't do the political language of human trafficking and things like that.
It's
I
okay.
didn't.
This is your story.
So
Okay, tell it how you need to tell it. It's fine.
okay. And I remember I went back and the the pimp said, oh, okay, you had to do a interview. Basically, I had to show him how much I could make, and so that first night I made about $5,000 for him, and he said, okay, I'll keep you. And so the pimp that I had left found out that I was back in the city, and he told him, and he literally had to pay him, and I had to then reimburse the pimp that I was with the money that he had spent out. So I've been bought, I've been sold. I have, I remember I recruited women. I was considered a madam at one time in my life where I had women working under me. Um, and I was their pimp. I would tell them, you can't come to this hotel room. I remember one girl, my pimp had left for the weekend. He had to go to see his other girls or whatever. And so he said, you're in charge. And I remember he brought me this new girl, and I had just made that day, I think it was like $9,000 I'd made that day. And she came into the hotel room and I said, what have you made? And she said, I ain't made nothing. I said, then you can't sleep here. I said, I just made $9,000. You got to make something, at least the room rent. And I said, you go ahead and go, and your stuff will be outside this room until you get that money, and then you come in here. I was very vicious to women. Um, when they came to me, they had to have money. They had to be making money, because I was always constantly having to make money. I was with one trafficker for almost 5 years, off and on. He would leave, or I would leave, or I would get away, or I would go find another pimp or whatever. And over the 5 years course, um, I made him almost $7 million, and that's including getting him a condo. Um, I didn't bought him a condo. I had bought him a car, plus supporting which I came to find out at the end, his actual family, because he was married. Didn't know he was married, and had two children at the time. Didn't know that. So that was my life. And then it was in 2014, and my trafficker and I was fed up. I was done. I was done. I was done living this constant cycle of trying to figure out how to survive. I was going from one house to another house. One minute you catch me in New York, the next minute, 2 days later, I'll be in Georgia, or 4 days later, I was in Chicago, or 2 days later. I mean, it was a never consistent place. I didn't have somewhere where it was consistent, and I was constantly having to pay people where I was staying. I was like, oh, okay, I'll give you some money if I could just lay my head here for 2 nights. I was tired of living like that, and so my trafficker and um, I had out with him. I was just done. He didn't want to be with me, and he just said, you just he's like, you're not good anymore. I don't need you anymore. And I was like, okay. So I had left, and I had went to another state, and when I don't even know how I had got a hotel room, and I was doing about 3 to 4 8 balls a day of crystal meth. I was, I wanted to die. I didn't want to live. I was just I was so dead. I didn't love myself. I figured the words that played in my head constantly was what my father had told me when I was younger. You wouldn't be good enough, to be married to anyone. That the only way I would be married is a pimp and hoe, and my pimp didn't want me no more. So if my pimp don't want me no more, no man would want me. So no man loves me. I don't love myself. Why don't I just die? And I somehow went to the hospital, and I don't even know how I got admitted or what made me go to the hospital, but I went to the hospital, and they did a pregnancy test on me, and they told me I was pregnant. And I was like, what? I told them, I said, I was told after I had my first son that I can't be pregnant, that I can't get pregnant, that there was complications with my first son, that there was no way for me to get pregnant. What do you mean I'm pregnant? So in 2014, they told me that I was pregnant, and they did a blood test, and I still sat there in denial. I was like, no, I cannot be pregnant. And so I left the hospital, and I remember I called my pimp, and I told him that I was pregnant, and the words that uttered out of his mouth, I thought you were going to give me $1,500, because before I had left the state where he was at, I told him that he needed some money, and I told him I'd get him $1,500. And he said, I thought you were going to give me $1,500. I was like, I just told you that I was pregnant with your kid. He's like, I don't care. I want my 1,500. And then I said, well, you convinced me. You ain't going to get that. And so next thing I know, I heard gunshots going off, and I took off running. Cars were driving past me and stuff. And I got into this place. They let me in. I don't even know how I got in. They let me in, and I said, I need to use the phone. And I called this place, and I called 211. And 211's information, and I said, I need a place. I need a domestic violence shelter, because I said my boyfriend. I was too scared to say pimp, but I was like, my boyfriend is trying to kill me and stuff, and I'm pregnant. So they said, okay, we'll come get you. And so that's when my life changed. Was after that moment I made that phone call. I had prayed, and most women who have been in either domestic violence relationships or in human trafficking, because they go hand in hand, have at one time in their life cried out to Jesus and asked God to save them. And that's what I did. And this shelter had said to me, we'll get you out of the state, but you got to find a shelter that will accept you. And so I said, okay. And so I called 27 different shelters, and none of them accepted me. They said that my situation was too severe. And then, yeah, so they said that I remember some shelters. And I mean, when I tell you, I called all around. I called in Maine. All 16 shelters in Maine denied me. They said that I would put danger to the women that were already there. And so I called the shelter, and it was early in the morning, and I had already called like 16 shelters before them. And they said to me, this woman gets on the phone, she says, I bet you I'm the first one you called today. And I said, actually, no, you're number 17. And she says, okay, well, you know what? Then I'll accept you into the place. You just got to get out here. And so I told the people, and they said, okay, and they bought a plane ticket for me. And on August 19th, I flew out to New England, and that is where I live at now. And when I came out to New England, I went to this shelter, and this woman told me about this place called Pregnancy Resource Center. And I'll never forget, I met this woman. Her name was Phyllis Phelps. And she looked at me and she said, you're home and you're welcomed here. And she asked me about my story, and I told her what happened. And at that point, I was about 4.5 months pregnant. And I'm sorry. And so she asked me, she said, what are you trying to do? And I said, I want an abortion. And she said, why? I said, because if I'm pregnant with a girl, I don't want to have a girl because I don't want my daughter to go through the things that I went through. I said, but if it's a boy, I can be okay with that. I said, it's going to be hard for me to love him because I walked away from my other son. She said, well, do you know about Jesus Christ? And I said, no. And so she said, well, would you be willing to, accept him into your heart and watch what Jesus Christ can do and to change your life? And I said, well, I've done everything else in my world. Why not try this? Like, okay. And so she said the sinner's prayer with me, and she did the ultrasound. And it's so funny because at the time when they did the ultrasound, I didn't realize this until actually a couple of years ago. I just found out that they did not know if the child was actually a boy, but they told me it was a boy at the time. And so I said, okay, I'll keep the baby. So then I looked at her and I said, now what? I said, I'm homeless. I have no family in New England. I know nobody. And you expected me to have a child. Now what? And so she told me about a program, and she said, they will help you in starting your life over again. And I said, okay. So I went through the program. And when I went through the program, I learned who Jesus Christ was. I learned that he is a God who loves.
Absolutely.
He's a God that will not lie to me. He says he's the father to the fatherless. And even though I have a father, my dad told me 7 years ago, he says, you are dead to me and your son will know you as they're dead. I don't want you around. I want nothing to do with you. And so I walked away. And so for 7 years, I haven't seen my son since he was 4. So I don't know what he looks like. I don't talk to him. He doesn't know anything. And I sat there and I said, okay. And I learned who Jesus Christ was. And through knowing who Jesus Christ was, I went to Bible college. And since then, I have graduated with not just a year certificate in theology, but I've graduated with an associate's degree in biblical theology.
That's so great. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I've written not just one, but 2 books. My other book is called Walk by Faith and Not by Sight. And that's about how I was born paralyzed on my left-hand side, had 39 seizures in my brain, and goes into details on when I was first born. And, the amazing thing that I think God has done in my life, not only that I've been able to keep my youngest son with me, and he's going to be 6, but the woman that God placed in my life, Phyllis Phelps, I now work with her at House of Hope, New Hampshire.
Awesome.
And I get to walk with her and help her with ladies who struggle with life-controlling issues, whether it is human trafficking, whether it is alcohol or drugs. It's been 6 years since I've been clean off of any drugs. It's been almost 6 years since I've been out of human trafficking. There's a lot of victories. 6 years and a couple days that I've lived in New England. And now the Lord has put it on my heart to do a food truck. And people ask me why. Even Phyllis asked me why, and I said because for two reasons. One, women can't get food off of while they're walking. They have to stay on the streets. So a food truck is convenient for them. And two, because I went without food for 2.5 weeks, and I will never forget that. And I know women out here go without food. So that's my story.
Wow. What an amazing story. Let me just applaud you and say congratulations on being addiction free for 6 years. That is a blessing. For welcoming Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, into your life. That is a blessing. Always keep God first. And then being able to parent your youngest child. Okay, so now I'm going to try to go back a little bit and
Yes.
pull some things out.
Okay.
So you said that your oldest son, you have not seen him since he was 4.
Correct.
So your parents don't speak to you now, correct?
No. So at when he was 4 years or when he was 2, my parents got full custody. They got a 500 yards or 1,000 yard stay away that because like I said, my life, they try to keep me away and stuff, which now coming to Christ and not being clouded and having a clear mind, I understand. And I even with my son, I wouldn't want people like that around my son either. So they have had full custody since he was 2. And my dad asked me, he asked me not to call until my son was 18. And so I want to respect that, you know. And then he said, once he turns 18, then I can reach out. And if my son wants to speak to me, then great. If not, and that's why I wrote the book. There's two reasons why, but that's one of the main reasons why I wrote the book, so that just in case my son ever finds out and he wants to know, that he'll know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, I want to clarify. So I have obviously no connection to human trafficking. And so a lot of people, when we talk about human trafficking, they always point to movies. And one of the most popular movies that's always pointed to is the movie Taken.
Mhm.
And you talk about going from one place to another place to having a pimp or a human trafficker. Is it like what we see in the movie, or is that not reality? Is that just fiction? What can you say about that?
So for me, and I want to be very clear that this I'm speaking for myself, not for any other survivor, and I know many other survivors. So for myself, that wasn't true. For me, I would never hit it under a bed. I was born and raised in United States. I'm a United States citizen. I wasn't Priceless. The movie Priceless shows and Taken show women coming from different countries. I was born and raised in the United States. So for me, and that's why I kind of write certain things that happened to me. I remember having to go into a hotel, having my head looking down at the ground, walking into a bathroom and having to stay in this bathroom with 7 other women for hours until the pimps were done talking. Or I needed a hotel room, and I remember this one of the pimps said, okay, you need to do certain acts and stuff, and I didn't do right. So he pulled out a gun on me and put the barrel to my eye and said, you need to do this correctly or I'm going to kill you if you want to stay in this room for tonight. It was just for a night. It wasn't like I needed a place for weeks. It was only he allowing me to stay there for a night. So that's what I went through. So when I saw Taken, I actually can't even watch it because I get infuriated because that's not what happened to me.
Okay. Okay.
So that's, but like I said, that's my story, you know, and I know many other women who, some of them that didn't happen to them either, but every story is different.
Right. Okay. That makes sense to me. I get that. So the other thing that I heard you say, it sounds like there is a network in the United States between pimps. Would that be an accurate statement where you work in one city with one pimp, you go to another city with another pimp, you're paying both of them for whatever services that you do. And that seems to be, and forgive me for saying it, it's almost like there is a code with them that if you find out that you are someone else's property, that they have to pay you for use of that property, either a penalty, or if they're going to keep you, they have to pay you, like you said, as if you're being bought.
Yeah. So and once again, I haven't been trafficked in almost 10 years. So the lifestyle can be completely different now. But when I was in it, everybody knew everybody's girl.
Wow.
So you would go, so it wasn't like Pretty Woman.
Hmm.
It, I hear a lot of people compare Pretty Woman. It's not Pretty Woman. A lot of women don't have a knight in shining armor coming to save them. So that at the end of the day, there was people. I remember I got a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning from, I don't even remember who was talking on the phone or who it was, but they just said, "Listen, your pimp's coming, and you need to make sure you have this amount of, I think it was like $8,000 ready for him when you get there."
Wow.
So it just, that was my life. That everybody knew who and where I was at, or where this person was at, or where this girl was at. Everybody knew.
Wow. So you also talked about the money, which is amazing and staggering to me. You said that you made one of your pimps, was it $7 million? Did I hear that correctly?
Yep,
And how do you know that it's $7 million?
because I had to count it.
Wow.
Because I had to count it. I had just because I would have to Western Union and MoneyGram him the money,
Really?
and because I would be in one state. So, say for instance, he was in New York and I was in Texas. I would have to Western Union him that money, and it got to the point where I actually had to have other people. I had to ask other people, "Hey, can I use can you send this money to him, please?" Because Western Union and MoneyGram told me I couldn't send the money anymore because
Wow.
I didn't realize, but they actually cap you after a certain amount of money
Mhm, mhm.
and stuff.
So I want to share some statistics, and I'm sure you know. In the United States alone, they said that there are 24.9 million, this is in 2019, are trapped in modern day slavery, as you accurately described it. They
Hmm.
said 16 million are exploited for labor, 4.8 million are exploited for sexual pursuits, 4.1 are exploited for other types of labor like domestic help.
Hmm.
Washington, D.C. has the highest number of human traffickers. There's 11.66 victims per 1,000 people, or per 100,000 people, excuse me. And this is when you said 7 million, it made sense to me because the statistic that I pulled, $150 billion is made in human trafficking around the world.
Yeah,
And that
the
is staggering figure. And when you talk about being in a room with seven other girls, like what would their ages be?
so I've trafficked with girls who were as young as 14,
Mhm.
all the way up to the age of 45.
Really?
Yes, I remember one lady, she was 45 years old, and her and her pimp had been together for 20 years,
Wow.
20, 30 years. And that's all she did. She traveled around. I'll never forget. And I looked at her and I was like, "You're what?" Like, and you still get money? That was what ran through my mind. I was like, and that was one of the ways that I was like, I have to get out. I was like, I can't be this old still doing this and living hotel to hotel. Um, people don't realize, and people think that it's a joke, but really you have a lot of judges. And the reason why Washington DC is one of the hottest spots is because of the politicians. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. The politicians, the lawyers, the judges, the doctors, all of the elite. A woman could put it on, and I think it was a couple of years ago where some of the nonprofit organizations that I know in New England went and fought for Backpage, because Backpage was a big
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Backpage, and I was on Backpage. I talk about that on my podcast. I was posting on Backpage. I was posting on Redbook, and you set us a thing. So for 20 minutes, you put it out there, 20 minutes for, and the way you had to word it was 500 roses, or 2,000 Hershey Kisses, which basically meant $2,000 for
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes or whatever. And that's how you got it. That's how they would word it, or how my pimps would word it and stuff. And I would go and and I tell people, like, some men, and by the grace of God, I did not come out with AIDS,
Yes.
or anything, because out of, I say, my whole life, I would say 90% of my my activities were unprotected, because you get paid more if it's unprotected.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I needed to, and there's quotas. See, and that's what people don't also understand. The pimps have quotas.
What would be an average quota for a night? And I don't. What's the average night? So are we saying 8 hours? And I'm not being funny because I don't know. So what would
So
be an average shift in
so
layman's terms?
in layman's terms, we'll just do. I remember one night it was from 8 p.m. I started one night and I went all the way till 7 o'clock in the morning. And my quota, when I wanted to leave, I'll give you a better one. So that was my times that I usually worked. But I remember I wanted to leave one of my pimps, and they told me, okay, well, you need to make me. He told me I needed to make him $3,700 in 24 hours.
Wow.
And that I could not use Backpage. I couldn't use any of the websites, that I had to only go out and walk the streets. And I had to make it in 24 hours. And he said if it wasn't made in that 24 hours, if I gave him, say, $3,600 and 95, 36.95,
Mm-hmm.
and I was $5 short, and it was 24 hours, he says I have to start all over again.
Wow.
Start from zero.
Wow. Wow.
That was my life.
Right.
Every pimp that I had, they always had a quota. Some was like 10,000. You got to come with 10,000 that day. You have 24 hours to make 10,000. Or you have 6 hours, you need to make, I don't know, 2,500. It all depend on which pimp I was involved in. But pimps have quotas. There's and that's one of the reasons why I wanted a food truck, because if I get a girl who is hungry, I'll feed them, and if they look tired, I'll tell them, come work on the food truck, because it will be a for-profit, so it will be a business. And
Right.
Okay, come work on my food truck. How much money is your pimp having you make tonight? Okay, I'll pay you to just work on the food truck, serve this food, and you don't have to walk the streets, and I'll give you the money.
Okay. So let me put a pin in that because I have a question. So
Yes.
if someone is being pimped out and their quota is $8,000
Okay.
and they have to pay it in 24 hours and you give them that offer, do you have the right to do that? Or is the pimp going to come back after you if you don't cover that money? Or because they feel that that person that they own is
Well, they
valuable.
wouldn't know. They wouldn't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
They wouldn't know. You see, and that was one of your questions you had, like, how do you get a girl out? How do you get
Right.
somebody out? They won't know. See, you have to get people. I tell everybody, don't call the police when you see it,
Right.
because you bring more attention. Because 90% of the time, my pimps were right there. So if you see a woman walking on the street and she's on that block, guarantee you, their pimps ain't that far from them. They about maybe a block and a half away from them.
Okay.
They're watching. So you have to be very slick and very sly about it, you know. And so that's where you have to know how to talk the language, how to act and stuff like that. And that's why I said, you hungry? Come eat. Sit down, have some food. Okay, you want to work? I can have, I'll have you do something that hides you for a minute, and then here you go. Now, if it's that amount of money and I don't have it, I'm gonna tell them, listen, I could give you maybe $200-300 just for this break that you had,
Mm-hmm.
so that it doesn't look like you didn't make anything in this like 10 minutes of you eating this food. Do you see
Wow.
what I'm saying?
I got
Like,
you. Mm-hmm.
so that they keeps them flowing, but they'll know that there's a safe place for them to come to, or a resting place.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's my hope, is that these women will understand that there's a resting place that they can get off their feet. Because I was on my feet constantly. It's to the point where I don't even wear high heels anymore. If I do, it's a very small pump, because I can't anymore. My back and everything, I can't do that no more.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So you mentioned about getting someone out. So you said we should not call the police. Now there is a national human trafficking hotline number. Is that a number that we should use? Because
Yes, you can
okay.
use that. The 211, also, when you call 211, when I did it, and they got me out, 211 helped me get out and stuff. I told them my pimps were trying to, kill me and
Mhm.
stuff, and they got me out. So there is ways to bring an awareness. You can also, and I've done it before, roll up next to a girl, and they'll say, hey, you want to date? Sure. Get them in the car. Okay, listen, and talk to them like, okay, I'm not here, I don't want to date, and let them know that you're not a narc, that you're not undercover, but you just want to help them. And if they want to get out, then you can help them get out. And then if not, then you just, give them. I always tell people, if they don't want to get out and you got them in, please give them something, because if you get out the car and they don't have nothing, you put them their lives in danger, because they're going to be beaten. I've been beaten with knives, guns, you name it. You got to give them something,
Wow. Wow.
because you're playing with somebody's life. This ain't no joke. That's what I have to tell people. Like, at the end of the day, you're playing Russian roulette.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you're playing with somebody's life.
Mhm. It's not like what we see in the movies.
No.
This has been a fascinating conversation, but our time is quickly passing. Tell us about your book. Tell us where we can find your book and how we can reach you.
Yes. So I actually have a copy of my book. I don't know if you can see it. It's
I
called
can.
There you go. It's called No More Games. It's available on Amazon. It's $8.99. I made it that price because I wanted anybody, because especially with the COVID and financial stuff, I wanted to make it affordable for everybody to get it. It's a book that brings an awareness on how to teach your children what to look out for.
Mhm.
So it shows how, even though my son's father didn't do it the way that I explain it in the book, but it's basically how he did it, and he talks to me, coerces me. That's a big thing that's in the human trafficking world, the word coercing. Basically, he manipulated in speaking different things. So that's what I talk about, and I talk about my life through the eyes of someone becoming aware of how to detect human trafficking,
Mhm.
and how I was saved, and that, and if there are anybody who doesn't know about Jesus Christ, that they would come to learn who Jesus Christ is. I have the salvation message at the end. There are people that I've named in there, like House of Hope New Hampshire, Real Life Giving, New Life Home for Women and Children, are just a few of the organizations that help women get out of that. So those are places they can reach out to. There's the websites are in the book. Like I said, I'm known around New England. I know a lot of different, like Route 101. That ministry deals with women that are in the strip clubs. And because 90% of them are being trafficked, and a lot of people don't realize that. but they're that's how you can get my books off of Amazon. You can get a hold of me at Sariah Lanae Hastings on Facebook and on Instagram. I do have a podcast called No More Games, and I talk and I go into detail on different subjects surrounding human trafficking, and it's out every Wednesday. It's on podcast, it's on Spotify, and I talk about this week. I'll be talking about how there was a girl that was bandaged and with duct tape and got thrown out of a car in Kentucky, and it never made it on the news.
Wow.
And somebody sent it to me. So I'm going to be talking about why this COVID thing is great, finding daddy, understand that this is a real thing, but there are women who are dying behind this thing, and stuff, and how at the end of the day, this is getting too much, we need to start saving women's lives and start thinking about what's going on, that there is a slavery that's going on right under our nose, and ain't nobody wanting to talk about it.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have two last questions.
Yes.
One, as parents, I have two young sons. I have lots of friends that have children. And I understand from listening to your story how your parents abused you emotionally and did not lift your spirit the way that they should have. What would you tell parents to look out for in terms of protecting their children from human traffickers or pimps?
Well, I went to the streets, just like people, boys and girls who choose to go into gangs is because they want to be in a family. Is why they go into gangs. The same with human trafficking. If the child does not feel like their family is giving the appropriate attention to them, that they're not taking time out for them intentionally, and not encouraging them. I talk to my son, and I don't use the word stupid to him. He comes to me and tells me, Mom, kids tell me that I'm stupid. I said, no, you're not. You are smart. You're God's child. You're the son of the Most High God. Jesus is your father. And, constantly tell him encouraging things, because it's because of that that's going to keep them. Because when they start hearing other things that doesn't sound like what lines up with what I'm telling them. See, my parents told me that I was fat, so when somebody told me that I wasn't fat, I believed them over my parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So we got to be careful of how we speak to our children, and it's become very relaxed, these days. Children think they can talk to their parents any old kind of way and just whatever. We really have to, and it's funny, I was born in the 80s, but really the 50s, the 60s, the way families were like back in the day needs to come back today, because that's one of the ways that people, these children will know the difference. They'll know the coercing, the manipulation. Oh, you look like it. No, my mom and dad say this, or no, this is who I am. I don't need to believe somebody that's on the streets.
Mm-hmm. And then last question. If there is someone that's watching who happens to see this and says, I want to get out, what would you tell them? Or if they're afraid to get out, what advice would you give them?
The first advice I'd give them is the advice that I did, and which is cry out to Jesus Christ. The first thing you can do is ask Jesus Christ to come into your heart, to set you free, because he is the Father that sets you free, because he is free indeed. And he's the one that will save you, and he will make a way for your out. He made a way out for me. He will make it for you. He is no respecter of one another. He will keep you. He will watch over you. He is your banner. He will go before you. And right now, whoever, if anyone is out there right now, and this also goes for women who are being in abusive relationships and a domestic violence relationship, if you are in a position that you are tired of living and surviving and worried about playing Russian roulette with your life, and you don't know if you're going to live the next day, cry out to Jesus, ask Jesus into your heart, and ask him to save you and set you free. And he will. If you truly mean, he will. He is a God that will save you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to give this number. This is the National Human Trafficking Hotline number. It's 1-888-373-7888. It's 1-888-373-7888. You can also text 233-687. They will send you information. So if you find someone that you think is in trouble, that is the number that you should call.
Yes.
Again, thank you, Sariah Lanae Hastings, for sharing your story. There's so much more that I wanted to ask you. So I hope that you will come back on the show so that we can
Yes.
do a part two. But thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and for sharing your words of wisdom. You've been watching The Kim B. Davis Show. I hope you'll join us for the next episode. Thank you again for watching. And as always, remember, be magnificent.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.